Of today to discover how they may feel about being in Jennings' shoes.
Those who fought in World War I felt were incredibly brave, like incredibly brave. I don't think I could ever do that.
Yeah, for me, the ones that fought in the war, I really do appreciate it. I would never have put myself up for it.
I think they were incredibly brave to be able to pluck up the courage to be able to leave their families and leave where they live to go and fight for their country. I think in this day and age, I don't think people will be able to pluck up the courage to be able to do that.
Thanks. I mean, you did a lot for Cornwall, you represented us well, apart from, like, we're all miners, so you did a good job.
100 years, lest we forget!
Come on then, let's all go down and say cheerio to those people. Come on, let's go. You have to go, I'm afraid. It's a shame. You have to go, John. You're in your country needs you. Yes. You'll be all right. You'll be safe.
Don't want to lose you, but think you ought to go. For the king and your country both need you so. We shall want you and miss you, but with all our might and main, we shall cheer you, thank you, bless you, when you come home again. Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you were Lucifer to light your fag, small boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
My lad was in this lot. Came through all those years with hardly a scratch. I'm not saying he was a coward or anything, he was always up with his lads, always ready to do his bit. We just thought he was lucky. We used to get letters from him. Of course, he couldn't say very much, but at least we knew he was all right. They looked after them well, you know. They even had their own supply of Tickler's jam. Of course, they had to shave every day and look after their boots, that sort of thing. They weren't sloppy. There was discipline. My lad was in the Devonshire regiment. Well, a lot of them grew up together and knew each other before the war. Some of them worked at the mill, Stowford paper mill. As time went by, they had all sorts in them. My lad told me that one of the men was a chap from Wales, Martha Tickler or some such. Of course, he was a miner, reserved occupation, essential work. So he wasn't in it for quite a while. Strange though, as funny lad, you know, a Welsh guy in a Devonshire regiment, just didn't seem right. Of course, a lot of them knew each other before the war. They used to knock around together, go to all the old county fairs, chucking around bales of hay and joining in the tug of war, trying to impress the girls. They had a marvellous time.
Some Pierce, send me your grey mare, all along round, round along Lee, for eyes are going to Widdicombe Fair with Reggie Hawker.
Captain Reginald Hawker, once of the 1st Devon Yeomanry, killed in Egypt, 1917.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter.
William Barter, Army Service Corps. Still alive as far as I know.
That's no surprise! Serving with that dodging lot, the ASC. Hey, away boys, Sunday's coming!
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley.
Soldier Harold Foley, 12th Trench Mortar Battery. They were all mates, you see. Poor Harold. Nearly got home, he did. Died of his wounds up near Calais. He was just 23.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey.
Major John Bailey. None of them actually knew him, of course. Him being a toff and all. He was master of the hunt and a territorial soldier before the war. The Royal North Devon Hussars. Major Bailey was taken ill in Gallipoli, he was. Died a few months ago, I hear.
Major Bailey, Arthur Horton.
Arthur Horton, 2nd Battalion, the Devonshire Regiment. Died in a hospital near Boulogne.
Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey, Arnold Horton, Reggie Hawk, Dick Blythe, Dick Blythe, Dick Blythe, lend me your grey mare, all along down, along Lee, for eyes are going to Widdicombe Fair, with Reggie Hawker, Billy Barter, Harold Foley, Major Bailey, Arnold Horton, Reggie Hawk, and old Geoffrey Seymour and old Geoffrey Seymour and old.
Old Geoffrey Seymour. He was their captain, you see, and my son. And he wasn't that old. He went into the trenches that morning to tell the lads that there'd be a ceasefire at 11 o'clock. And they'd probably all be home by Christmas. Well, you can imagine. Or can you? Back home, we heard Lord George on the wireless making the announcement.
I am glad to tell you that the war will be over at 11 o'clock today. You are well entitled to rejoice. The people of this country and our allies have won a great victory for humanity. The sons and daughters of the people have done it, and they have won this hour of gladness. Let us thank God.
All the bells are ringing. People dancing in the streets, all getting ready to welcome our hands home by Christmas. And then we heard about our Geoffrey. Seven minutes past 11, our Geoffrey was shot dead. German sniper got him in the head. Of course, the news hadn't got round to everyone, and perhaps they didn't all believe it anyway. Perhaps it could have been a trick. Handing around the cigarettes he was. Some stupid bugger used the same light 3 times. They had a rule about that. Never use the same light 3 times. The first flame alerts the hunt. The second tells them where you are. And if it's the third one, you've had it. Bang. And Geoffrey was engaged, you know. He's so looking forward to getting married. Dorothy's a lovely girl. I don't think she'll ever get over it, just like so many more. This is his cigarette case. We'll send it on to her so she'll have something to remember him by.
She already knew that Geoffrey had died, but it was when Mrs. Seymour sent his cigarette case. I suppose that made it so real for Dorothy. All day she sat on the grass with Geoffrey's cigarette case in her hand. She hardly noticed how the beautiful morning, golden and calm as autumn in Devon can be, turned slowly into a gorgeous afternoon. For hours she remained in that state of suspended physical animation, when neither heat nor cold, hunger nor thirst, fatigue nor pain appeared to have any power over the body. Afterwards, she told me that her emotions were totally illogical, and led her to a conviction that Geoffrey's presence was somewhere with her.
But it was no use. Geoffrey was dead. And all at once, as I gazed into nothing, the words of the personal column advertisement I'd cut out and sent to Geoffrey 2 years earlier struggled back into my mind.
Lady, fiancé killed, will gladly marry officer, totally blinded or otherwise incapacitated by the war.
I even remember the words that I wrote to Geoffrey at the time. At first it is a little startling, then the tragedy of it dawns on you. The lady doubtless has no particular gift or qualification and does not want to face the dreariness of an unoccupied and unattached old maidenhood. But the only person she loved is dead, and all men are alike to her now. It is a matter of indifference whom she marries, so she thinks she may as well marry someone who really needs her, someone who will need a perpetual nurse. And she, if married to him, can do more for him than an ordinary nurse. and will perhaps find relief for her sorrow in devoting her life to him. Hence the advertisement. I wonder if anyone will answer it. It is purely a business arrangement with an element of self-sacrifice, which redeems it from utter sordidness. But quite an idea, isn't it? I'm still just a girl, not yet a lady, and I certainly don't mean to go through life with no particular gift or qualification, but quite an idea, isn't it? Wasn't it, Geoffrey? Quite an idea.
Now, darling, let me help you.
Thank you so much.
Just keep still.
They put the screens around his bed. A crumpled heap, I saw him lie. White counterpane and rough, dark head. But those screens showed that he would die. They put the screens around his bed. We might not play the gramophone. And so we played the cards instead and left him dying there, alone. The covers on the screen are red. The counterpane is white and clean. He might have lived and loved and wed, but now he's done for at 19. An ounce or more of Turkish lead. He got his wounds in Suvla Bay. They brought the Union Jack to spread upon him when he goes away. He'll want those 3 red screens, no more. Another man will get his bed. We'll make the row we did before. But Jove, I'm sorry that he's dead. God, Miss Dorothy, am I thankful that shift is over. You did so well, you were so brave. Nobody expected you to come in today.
Brave? No, I need to be working.
Oh, well then, we won't talk about it. But you did so well. So well.
Oh, Nancy, I mean, do you remember how bad it was when we first started? It wasn't easy for us VAD nurses, especially at first.
The regular nurses were awful to us.
Oh, I know, they said we were useless, couldn't make up a bed to save our lives.
Well, of course, you couldn't make a bed, Dorothy. We have servants for that sort of thing.
Yes, but we soon learned, and then we showed them.
Yes, those nurses were nothing for us, not after we'd been campaigning for the vote.
Ah, yes. Mrs. Pankhurst was completely right when she said the argument of the broken window pane is the most valuable argument in modern politics today.
There will never be complete equality until women themselves help to make laws and elect lawmakers.
That's the American Susan Anthony.
Oh,
We won't get the vote until we turn 30.
I know, it's a disgrace.
Oh,
Mother had a letter from Robert last week.
what use are letters?
Oh, near my house.
Oh, well, it could have been worse. Did you hear about poor Mary Stewart in the village? Well, Mary became engaged to the mill worker, Tom Owen, just before he enlisted. Then Tom was killed in 1915 and his mother told Mary. Evidently, he'd spoken to some soldier friends And Albert Gray had written to Mary as well.
Oh, that Albert Gray must have realised that Mary wouldn't get official notification of his death.
Yes, he must have rifled through Tom's personal effects to find her address. The simply awful thing is that his letter sought to conceal nothing.
I were Tom best mate. He was such a nice young man. Never had a bad word about anyone. He was well liked throughout the platoon. I'm sorry he has gone, miss, but take it from me, he felt nothing. He was caught in the head by a German sniper and never recovered consciousness.
Oh, but it gets worse.
Worse?
Yes. Well, Mary then received a letter from Tom's officer, a Lieutenant Borrington. For being properly raised, Mary replied to both Albert Gray and Lieutenant Borrington, simply wishing to prepare them for the information, sad as it was.
That was nice of her, and brave.
But then, a few months later, her letter to Albert Gray was returned, marked killed in action. She then received a letter from a Mrs. Borrington of Exeter.
Dear Miss Stewart, I am the mother of Lieutenant Donald Borrington, and your letter to him has been given to me, along with his other belongings. I regret to inform you that my son was killed 2 weeks ago in Belgium. From the dates, it seems he died just a few days after receiving your letter of thanks to him.
So you see, the awful thing is, all three of them were killed. Albert Gray, Tom Owens, and Lieutenant Borrington.
And Lord knows how many more.
I know, this blasted, horrible war.
Scream, nurse!
You thought we'd be home by Christmas, didn't you, Joe? Admit it. Yes, it's you I'm talking to, Private Bates. You thought the fighting had ended and us soldiers, sailors and airmen would all be spending Christmas home with our families. Well, that's what they bloody well said at the start of the war. It'd all be over by Christmas. That was 4 years ago. We all thought the war would be over, didn't we? Go on, admit it. November the 11th, 1918, day the guns fell silent. No, it was just an armistice, a ceasefire. Didn't get either you or me out of the army, did it? Not a chance of it. Taff was lucky though. He'd only been in France 3 weeks. Reserved occupation, you see. He was jammy. Sent home to spend Christmas in Wales with his mum and dad, he was. And where did we end up? Some dingy, horrible French town. Can't even remember what it was called. Funny thing though, turns out it took Taff longer getting home than he spent out here with us. You see, he had a bit of an accident on the ship going home. The water was really choppy and men were throwing up all over the show. He tried to get up on deck to get away from the stench, but he slipped and fell down the stairway and broke his arm. The medical officer said it was a really bad break. Poor bugger. We had to laugh. He spent several months in the VAD hospital in Stowford. Where did we end up? Clearing these god-awful battlefields. I'd rather be down a coal mine any day. Dad! What is it, Joe? What is it, mate? Oh, have you found another one of the poor buggers? Listen, don't worry, mate. We'll dig him up properly and bury him with a rest. Tell you what, why don't you go and have a rest? Go and have a smoke. Go on, I'll take over. Go and have a smoke. Go on. I think he's a bit shell-shocked. 2 of his mates got blown to bits just yesterday. Too many unexploded bombs. So they're still getting killed. I remember poor old Captain Seymour getting shot like that minutes into the Armistice. They never found out where the bullet came from. Poor old Captain Seymour. He was one of the best. Joined the battalion right at the start of the war. Only to get shot on Armistice Day. It was proper bad luck.
How's it going, Sergeant Hannaford?
Well, not so good, Lieutenant Westlake. Joe Bates has been acting strange these past couple of days.
Shell-shocked.
Oh, could be, sir. Captain Seymour going like that really shocks. Really shocks. Scuppered him up. Really upset him.
Sit down. Sit down, Wally. I want to tell you something. Do you remember Lieutenant Hodgson?
Oh, I'll never forget him. I remember Lieutenant Hodgson. It was a proper gent, he was.
William Noel Hodgson. We called him Smiler. That was his nickname. Smiler.
He wasn't from Devon, was he?
No. He came from East Anglia. When he volunteered back in 14, his first posting was straight to us. All the officers liked him.
Oh, and the men too. We all liked Lieutenant Hodgson. Proper gent he was.
Yeah, he was a bombing officer at Loo.
Yes.
Yeah. Many of us thought he ought to have been promoted.
Oh, he'd have made a fine company commander.
Yes. This is the interesting thing, Wally. I only found out a few days ago that Smiler Hodgson had been writing poetry. He'd been published under a pen name.
Well, I knew he was well educated, sir.
Seems to have been writing for some time. He started publishing poetry early in 16.
I had no idea.
Well, he kept pretty quiet about it at the officers' mess too. Wally, it's one of his poems that really struck me.
Why, Mr. Westlake?
Well, do you remember the trenches on the Somme back in July 16, before the push?
I'll never forget them, sir.
It was a lovely sight in front of us. Green fields and trees.
We knew the German gun positions facing us, sir. We could only guess what damage they would do when we went over the top.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And so did Smiler Hodgson by the sound of it. This poem is called Before Action. It was published just a few days before Smiler died. It's almost as if he had a premonition of his own death. Listen, Wally.
By all the glories of the day and the cool evening's benison, by that last sunset touch that lay upon the hills when day was done, by beauty lavishly outpoured and blessings carelessly received, by all the days that I have lived, make me a soldier, Lord. By all man's hopes and fears, and all the wonders poets sing, the laughter of unclouded years, and every sad and lovely thing, by the romantic ages stored with high endeavour that was his, by all his mad catastrophes, make me a man, O Lord. I that on my familiar hill saw with uncomprehended eyes 100 of those sunsets spill their fresh and sanguine sacrifice, ere the sun swings his noonday sword, must say goodbye to all of this, by all delights that I shall miss. Help me to die, O Lord.
Our 9th Battalion was one of the few British units to reach its objective on the first day of the Battle of the Somme.
But at what cost, Lieutenant Westlake? What cost?
775 soldiers attacked at dawn on the 1st of July. By the end of the day, over half of them were dead, missing, or wounded.
Our chaplain, Mr. Cross, had them buried in the old trench. And what was it he used to say?
The Devonshires held this trench. The Devonshires hold it still. But, yes, we survived.
We did. We survived.
And all the Ivybridge men who fought that day survived too.
Many of our friends were killed or wounded. Too many.
And amongst them, my very good friend, Smiler Hodgson.
Sick right, may be your gray hair. Along down the long round along the, for eyes are going to Wellington there, with Bertie Hawker, Billy Martyr, Harold Foley, Baker Bailey, Smiler Hobson, Bernie Walk, and old Geoffrey Seymour, and old Geoffrey Seymour, and all.
Oh, I can't believe we're still getting so many patients in. That's another 2 we've had this morning. Oh, such a shame about the Welshman Taffy who had the accident on the boat on his way home.
I know, and they always seem to send them to hospitals a long way from home. There was that one this morning, Eddie from the Royal Field Artillery. I thought he was lovely, but that was ever such a rude joke he told about not having gunner ear. Honestly, you do learn a lot when you're a nurse.
Oh, did you say there's going to be a street party in Ivybridge to celebrate the end of the war?
Yeah.
Perhaps you could invite Eddie, the gunner, just to make sure he doesn't exacerbate his injuries, of course.
As if I would.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. I have a letter from my brother. I'll read it to you.
Oh.
Dear Nancy, I'm well and trust you are. I wanted to write to you to let you know what has been going on since November the 11th. What a day that was. Losing Geoffrey that way, just as he gave his men the news of the Armistice. It was truly dreadful. God moves in mysterious ways. Andrew Dickens, he's a captain in the 16th Battalion, told me a funny tale. The day before the Armistice, his men marched into the Belgian town of Tournai. The CO had a regimental band play the Brabant song, their national anthem. As you may imagine, this was much to the delight of the townsfolk. Andrew said the population had buried a lot of food and wine to hide it from the Germans, and when the 16th marched in, they dug it all up to have a celebratory feast. What a tale! What about me, I hear you ask? Well, after the Armistice, I was on battlefield clearance, and for a while, then I transferred back to our 2nd Battalion. We were all presented with the Croix de Guerre by a Frog General. You must have read about it. It was all over the news. First such award to a British regiment. Not that much reward for the battalion being almost wiped out in France. I felt a bit of a fraud, actually, because I wasn't there with them. I expect the folks at home believe the fighting is over, but it's not so. Major Northcote is preparing to sail to Murmansk in the north of Russia with a company of men to fight against Bolsheviks and cover the withdrawal of our troops there. I'm expecting some leave soon, Nancy, but don't tell Mara apart. I shall let them know myself, and I'll try to visit Mrs. Seymour.
Oh, I do hope Geoffrey will visit Mrs. Seymour. She's not been doing too well.
It must be very hard for her.
And hopefully he'll visit your parents as well.
It must be hard for the parents of all the men here at the hospital. I suppose they're looking forward to seeing their boys again.
One day.
It must be hard for them as well. The servicemen, I mean. They sign up and join for the duration, and now they're likely to be sent out to Russia. It's just not fair. All that cold.
Yes.
Perhaps it would be a kindness to take them to the street party, after all.
Yes, why not? Certainly, yes. Oh, I do feel for the men. I know I can be, well, a little bit stern with some of them sometimes.
Sometimes? Dorothy, you're positively always stern with them.
Am I really? I really don't mean to be. I'm just, well, a little bit frightened. They can be a bit vulgar sometimes.
There's no need to be frightened. They're just men. Maybe a bit rough around the edges.
Yes, rough diamonds, I suppose. You know that new one, Evans? I think he's rather nice. He's quite funny.
And so is Eddie. I mean, I'm going to agree.
Oh, they're all rather nice in their own ways.
Except that rude petty officer Finney.
Oh, yes, nobody gets it.
The rain is slipping, it's dripping down the street. The day is grey as ashes on the hearth. The children play with soldiers made of tin, while you sew row after row. The tears are slipping, dripping one by one. Your son has shot and wounded his small brother. The mimic battles ended with a sob, while you dream over your scene. The blood is slipping, it's dripping drop by drop. The men are dying in the trenches' mud. The bullets search the quick among the dead, while you drift, the gods sift. The ink is slipping, it's dripping from the pens. On papers, white and orange, red and grey. History for the children of tomorrow, while you prate about fate. War is slipping, dripping, death on earth. If the child is the father of the man, is the toy gun father of the grubs? For Christ's sake, think, while you sew row after row.
Who's there?
Oh, it is only me, Mrs. Annesford.
Oh, hello, dear. Come in, have a seat.
You been to me there, then?
Oh, just mostly listening out. Mrs. Seymour's expecting a guest.
Ethel, I've got a letter here from my boy Joe. That is right, Evans, but it do look proper odd. Oh, I do hope he'll be home soon.
Come here, let's have a look. I'll read it to you.
Dear Mother, I am very well. We are somewhere in France, but even if I name the place we are billeted at, my officer will censor it. We are clearing the battlefield to make it fit again. Oh, Mum, you just can't imagine what it's like for us. But I'm bearing up well. We spent Christmas in a small French town. But now I can't remember what it was called. Good news, Mum. I have my release papers and hope to be home soon. I am so looking forward to seeing you again. Give my love to my sisters and, of course, to you.
Yeah, you're right. His writing is a bit off. But think yourself lucky. Your lad's coming home. Mrs. S, since last year, 2 boys not coming back.
I know. But it's been a long time. 'Tis too long, Ethel. Have you heard from your wife or your brother recently?
Nah, Wally don't write much. But he says he's fine, so, you know. And last I heard from old Tommy, well, he was in Scotland, clearing mines. Says he thinks of me all the time.
Oh, does sound proper dangerous to me.
What, thinking of me?
No, don't be silly. For clearing mines.
Well, come here, I'll see you.
Oh, let's be off.
That's an old fun.
I know, no, clearing mines, I meant.
Mrs. Hannaford, please answer the door. Robert. Oh, Robert. But I did not expect you in uniform.
I'm only on leave, Mrs. Seymour. I have to report back to my regiment in a week's time.
Oh, but I thought that everything was over.
It's an armistice, a ceasefire. It's not really the end of the war.
No, I have heard that there was unrest in the ranks. Is that true?
Yes, some. There was certainly a mutiny in Folkestone, back in December. Over 2,000 men mutinied. So, Johnny Southgate and 5 other officers from the South Downs was sent to restore order. But it's all calmed down now that Winston Churchill's taken over as Secretary of State for the war. But enough of that. How are you, Mrs. Seymour?
Well, it's nice of you to ask, Robert. I'm recovering. Yes, recovering. Do you know what I did in the war, Robert? Well, of course you don't know. How silly of me to ask. Well, I supervised the collection of sphagnum moss from the mall. With a couple of very nice ladies from Totnes, we gathered scores of women from all over South Hants, and together we collected, cleaned, and packaged sphagnum moss. Tons of it.
And very useful it was too as a wound dressing. Your work was indeed most important, Mrs. Seymour.
Was it? Was it really? Oh, I do hope so. Well, I expect you know why I wanted to see you, Robert. I had a letter from Geoffrey's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Fairweather. Do open it.
Yes, of course.
And this was Geoffrey's. He sent it to Dorothy Hurst. She sent it back. Do read the letter, Robert.
Dear Mrs. Seymour, it is with the deepest regret and sympathy that I write to you about your son, Captain Geoffrey Seymour, who was killed in action whilst under my command. Geoffrey was a fine officer, popular with his fellows and respected by his men. If it is of any consolation to you, I would have you know that your son was killed instantly. I have spoken with his men, and they are sure he did not feel a thing. Your son was gallant to the end.
What I want to know is, Robert, when the Colonel writes that Geoffrey died, didn't feel a thing, died instantly, is he telling me the truth? Or is this what every officer writes, and every mother reads?
Mrs. Seymour, I do not know what every mother reads, but I am sure of this. His men told me that he died instantly, and his men would not lie.
Were you there?
No. But I was called for before he was taken away for burial. And I saw him, and I'm sure he died instantly.
Dear Mrs. Cornwall, I know you would wish to hear the splendid fortitude and courage shown by your boy during the action of May the 31st. His devotion to duty was an example for all of us. The wounds which resulted in his death within a short time were received in the first few minutes of the action. He remained steady at his most exposed post at the gun, waiting for orders. His gun would not bear on the enemy. All but 2 of the 10 of the crew were killed or wounded, and he was the only one who was in such exposed position. But he felt he might be needed, as indeed he might have been. So he stayed there, standing and waiting under heavy fire, with just his own brave heart and God's help to support him. I cannot express to you my admiration of the son you have lost from this world. No other comfort would I attempt to give to the mother of so brave a lad, but to assure her of what he was, what he did, what an example he gave. I hope to place in the boys' mess a plate with his name on and the date and the words, faithful unto death. I hope someday you may be able to come and see it there. Signed, Captain Robert Lawson, HMS Chester, and Mrs. Lily Cornwall, Jack's home.
Dear Geraldine, I'm sorry I've not written before. I've been a bit busy exchanging news with Fritz. I just had a bit of a lie down whilst I watched a few bombs landing around us. It was a bit of a muddy bed with some snow for a blanket, but it was all right. They tried to get us twice this evening, but I'm still here. I often wonder how you're all getting on, and I should like to hear. Seems a very long time since I saw you last year. I'm not allowed to tell you much, so best wishes for the new year, and remember me to your friends.
I think my wounds are getting better, but there are about a dozen of them. It's not much fun to stay in bed. At least I can write a letter without worrying about censorship. It's pretty rough out there, surrounded by mud and bodies, never quite sure how long it will be before they get you. We had to sleep one night in an open field with German shells landing nearby. Gas shells and shrapnel got me, and I still have bits stuck in my face. I got sent to the clearing station with the other casualties, but we had to wait a few days for a ship. It's good to be back on regular, reasonable meals. It was a bit of a shock when a bomb went off outside the hospital, but the only damage was to a couple of glass doors.
We're supposed to do 5 days on the front and then 5 days resting. But when the weather hots up, that's forgotten. And we just carry on. Gets a bit smelly in the hot weather. Of course, it's not just the people, it's the horses as well. I can't say any more. Well, we had Sunday dinner yesterday. Perhaps not quite as we know it, and certainly no seconds. It was bully beef stew, but only 2 potatoes between 30. Still, we can always rely on army biscuits.
They wake us up at 4 in the morning, but it takes a few hours to get everything ready to move on. We didn't always travel in comfort, but I was lucky enough to get a seat in a cattle truck. It was still a bit chilly after a 6-hour journey. We can get very wet while we're waiting around with full pack, waiting for the next march. There's a lot to carry around, what with 150 rounds of ammunition, clothing, ground sheet, emergency food supply, mess tin, cleaning stuff, soap and all that. Now we've got field dressings and masks as well. Oh, and don't forget the rifle. I sometimes wish I had a blanket though.
Dear Alfred, thanks very much for your letter. We are in the trenches most of the time now. We have to share them with some pretty battered up old blokes who will never see the light of day again. There just isn't time to get them properly underground. Our little dugout was flooded out. The water was over our knees at one point in a very heavy thunderstorm.
Dear Mr. Arkwright, I will not be writing to you again, as another man has invited me to live with him. He has a good job and will be able to look after me so that I no longer have to go out to work. It wouldn't have been so bad if you'd been home on leave like the other men, but because you're a prisoner of war, you've been away for a very long time, and I don't know if I will ever see you again. My new man is not interested in our children, so they will have to live in the orphanage. They will have a better life there than the one I have been able to give them. Best regards, Edith Armstrong.
My dear mother, if you are reading this, it is a sure sign that I have not been privileged to come through the challenge laid before our nation. Remember that you can be proud to have given your only son in the defense of our country. And I promise you that I will have been honorable to my last breath.
Yeah, go have a chat. I thought you'd like to see you. Oh, it's lovely to see you. Come, Joan, you sit down. He's not saying much then.
No, Joe will be just fine. He just needs to get over his wounds.
Oh, what's that then?
Well, in his head he is. In his head. Seeing Mr. Seymour shot right in front of his eyes and on Armistice Day of all days. too much for him. Turned his brain, it did.
So, what's he going to do now when his army money runs out?
Oh, Lord only knows. Before the war, he worked at the baker's, delivering bread and cakes all round Ivybridge on his bike.
That's nice work.
Joe really enjoyed it. Do you think there'll be any work at the mill?
I just don't know.
Well, we'll be all right. He just needs time. Time heals all wounds. We'll be fine, won't we, Joe? Joe? Joe?
Oh! Who do you think you are?
Brother! 2847! Bench! Joseph!
Joe? Tis me? Tis your mum?
Oh, dear, Mrs. Banks.
Come on. Joe! Joe! Tis only the horses, Joe. Tis only the horses. Come on, calm yourself down. Come on, boy, calm yourself down. It's fine.
You remember, don't you, son? Back in 14, just after the war broke out. You remember we went to Kingsbridge to see the horses on the quay. There must have been thousands of them. They were all there for the army to inspect, to see how many they could take for the war. We've never seen so many horses before. Beautiful they were. Carriage horses, hunters, hacks, plough horses, every sort of horse you'd ever seen. And all the shops were shut. Everybody turned out to see such a wonderful sight. Splendid animals they were, being loaded onto the trains at the station. They were all being taken to Beaufort Camp to be trained for the field artillery. Then they were off to war. Just like you were, Joe. Just like you were.
The horses? People got real devious about their horses. I could tell you a funny story.
Oh, go on, Ethel, tell us.
Oh, well, you know my Wally works at the paper mill. Well, didn't the managers hear the government was coming to inspect? Didn't they say get one of the best horses, go hide it underneath the viaduct?
Oh, I really like that. Come on, Joe. Let's go home, shall we? And have a nice cup of tea. Come. You'll be all right. Come. Come home with me.
Oh, good to see you again, Mr. Westlake.
Nice to see you too, Ollie.
How are you?
Not so bad, thank you. I think you can stay on as a regular. In the peacetime, it's not a bad life.
Oh, well, if it suits you, have you heard anything of Joe lately?
He's got his old job back at the baker's. We've all been so worried about you and the boys.
Oh, well, we're back now. Back in Devon, all 25 of us.
Is that all that was left when they let you go?
Well, as you know, when they ran the battalion down, they weren't replacing the men. So by June this year, there was just one officer and 24 of us men left.
Blimey.
And so by June, do you know what?
What?
Well, when we arrived back at Exeter Station, there was no one there to greet us. They'd all forgotten us.
What will you do now, Robert?
I think I'll stay on the army. I like the life.
Really?
Yes, I do.
Wasn't it all simply dreadful out there?
Well, it was war, and yes, it was grim. But not all the time.
Can you explain? I know we don't like to talk about it, but...
Well, we had dry trenches, as well as those stinking mud-filled pits around you. And we were only on the front line for a few days at a time, you know. 3 days at the front, then back to a comfy billet for a bath and a clean-up. And most of the time, the food was pretty good. And did we have some laughs? Oh, we had plenty of laughs as well. As well as the tragedy.
If you say so.
Do you know, Nancy, if it, I hope you're not going to be too embarrassed by what I'm about to say.
I'm a nurse, Robert. Try me.
Well, if it hadn't been for the war, I think I'd still be a virgin. Same for many of the men, I expect.
Robert Harford Westlake. French wars, was it?
No, Belgian actually.
Do you think we ever will get back to normal?
Well, I saw Joe Bates the other day. He's still pretty shaken up. His mum insists he's getting better. And Wally, he'll soon have his job back at the mill. I'm sure they'll all come. Whether that means getting back to normal, I don't know.
Was it worth it, Robert?
Of course it was worth it. We won. Nancy, we won. And that's what makes it all worthwhile.
But did we, Robert? Did we win? And if so, what did we win?
Yes, we won. And even Geoffrey Seymour's death, tragic as it was, that still makes it worthwhile. All deaths, they all died, so there will never be wars again. Don't you see, Nancy? We won the war to end all wars.
And the rose
service is over. And it's not. I've had 2 years of national service when I have to do exactly as I'm told. I don't know whether it has finished by now, but let's forget, it was very, very powerful. All young men. It really was, and I think it possibly still is.
Hear, hear.
Two, three, 4, 5, 9, 7, 6.